everyone, welcome to the next PentaBAR. So I'd like to know if you can hear me, and please send in the chat, comment in the chat to let me know if you can hear me and if you can see me. Okay, so yes. So by the way, let me know where you're speaking from. Get your coffee, get your water. I've already got my water, my cup of tea. So if you want to get started with that, get your water. So we are going to be here for at least 1 hour. And I'm going to present a wonderful tool that I discovered a few years ago and helped dozens of my clients so far. So I'm Carol Palombini. I'm a psychologist and executive coach specialized in tech leadership. And that's why I have this partnership now with PentaBAR, which I want to thank for inviting me to speak to you today. This is part of a partnership to provide a 360-degree approach to tech leadership development. So you can send some messages in the chat, but since I'm going to be hosting this on my own, I will prefer if you send the questions to the Q&A feature of Zoom, please. So at the end of the presentation, I will take a look at the questions, and maybe every 10 minutes I can stop and take a look at the questions. But I will also make you some reflective questions that you can use the chat to share your answers with each other, and I'll try to check it once in a while. So let me check a little bit where you're coming from. So here, feel free to chime in. Okay, so now PentaBAR is here to now. You can send your questions right away, right now, if you want, and let me know where you're speaking from. So here in the chat, I would love to know where you're speaking from. UK, Romania. So I'm speaking from Lisbon. I don't know if you know that. So we have people from Moldova, Austria, France. Wow. You have people from the US, Paris, Germany, Ukraine. Cascais is close to me. So David, I'm in Cascais as well. Vienna, Austria, Paris. So it's really international. I'm really in love with this. So let's go. I'm going to start sharing then the presentation. Let me just start sharing here with you. So can you see my presentation? Okay, so let's move on. So let me move on to the session purpose. I cannot see the chat here. Wait a minute. Okay. No Q&A chat here. Okay, so you can see the presentation. Okay. So let's go to the session purpose. So you are here today to learn how to develop C-level communication to engage and motivate people to action, right? And that's why research shows that 3 in 4 employees see effective communication as the #1 leadership attribute. And also Gallup's report show that engaged employees are 17% more productive than their peers. So bad communication habits can have the opposite effect to desire. They damage your reputation and cause your company to lose businesses and talents. So to help develop strategic communication, I will present today the AIM framework. I have been working on communication development for over 15 years already, and this is the most simple and interesting tool I've ever come across. It has helped dozens of my clients so far. When you adopt the AIM framework, you will develop strategic communication that retains customers and clients, motivates the team, and drives people to action. So let's go. So people that have been through an individual coaching with me know that I always take real situations. So that's what's my proposal for you today, to pick a real situation to work through this webinar. So I'm going to make some reflective questions so that you can actually put this in practice, and at the end of the webinar, you actually have actionable things to do. So to improve communication. So the first thing is to choose a situation. It could be a one-to-one meeting, a team meeting, meeting with clients, executive meeting, business presentations, feedback you have to give or you have to receive. The thing is that this situation must be important to you and that you can use as an exercise. So when you have real situations, you're connecting with the emotion that you will have in that situation. And when emotions are involved, things change. You get anxious, you get angry, you get sometimes apprehensive. So let's see how you can handle all that. So these are the two most important questions I would like you to answer for yourselves reflectively, or you can share it also in the chat. It's the why did you choose this situation? Why is it important? And what for? What do you want to achieve as a result of the communication? And why do I separate these two questions? Because usually when I ask my clients why this is important to you, they usually give me reasons. A sentence is starting like with because my team is overloaded. So I want to make this presentation. I want to make a proposal to my leadership because my team is overloaded, or because the deadline is not realistic, or because there's a client demand that we can't deliver. It's always because. And when we want to be strategic, we have to focus on the what for. That's what gives purpose. That's what gives direction. It's what you want to achieve as a result of the communication. So what is clearer for you? The why or the what for? You can share also in the chat if you want. But in my experiences, usually people give a lot of attention to the why and they actually forget the what for. So now that you've chosen a situation, I would like to explain what I understand for C-level communication. I took this definition from a PentaBAR webinar that I love, the CTO Fundamentals webinar they have, that I really recommend if you haven't seen it. Most of this webinar was made on top of that. So taking the emotional aspects of what they put as responsibilities and business skills that CTOs should have. So what do they say there? They say the strategy is about having a better positioning towards a given direction. And I totally agree with this. So positioning is all about communication. And these are the three most important aspects of strategic communication. It's to be, first of all, to be purpose-driven. So it's to go executives that are strategic in their actions, they actually have a goal in mind. They never lose sight of that goal. And they use communication as a tool, not as something that's really just an obligation, but something that can work towards this goal. The other aspect is having this 360-degree view. You must take into considerations a lot of stakeholders when you are in a strategic positioning. So that's very difficult for especially people that come from the tech industry. They are developers and then they become leaders and they grow in this leadership path, is that they have to have many more stakeholders into the consideration, and that can be sometimes overwhelming. And this communicating complex ideas is a challenge specific for technology, people from technology, because this is the biggest challenge, to feel that you belong to the C-level. It's feeling that what you say is accepted by them. They understand what you say and you're part of that group. You can contribute to that group. But this is not enough. These are just areas, it's too broad, it's too big for us to work with. So how are we going to know how to develop the strategic mindset, the strategic communication? Is by watching observable behaviors. So let's narrow it down to some behaviors related, the most important behavior related to these three areas. So when you are purpose-driven, you have to focus on the future. And you have to be always inspiring people to action. And one of the things that I think is very hard, specific for my clients and tech leaders, are this translating mission, vision, and values into attitudes. I feel they have a hard time with this because they cannot, usually they don't use that many adjectives in their communication, and they are not too concerned with this role. So usually they are more concerned with explaining technology than explaining why or what for of the things that people are doing. And act as a role model, of course, preach what you teach. I think it's basic. And when you go to 360-degree view, it's the ability to collaborate with internal and external stakeholders. We usually focus more on one stakeholder, but sometimes you totally forget about other stakeholders. And in my experience, usually tech leaders, they focus a lot on their teams. They have much more of their attentions than partners, clients, and even the board, their colleagues. So understand stakeholders' expectations, like map their expectations. You have tools for that. Listen with empathy, focus on benefits and consequences to them. So when you have this 300-degree view, you have to prioritize, of course. And we are actually going to have a next webinar, the third webinar or the second on this series. We'll take into consideration the time management. So we're going to speak specifically about time management, and I can leave to that opportunity. So about communicating complex ideas, translating technology into business and vice versa. This is essential for tech leaders, and this is going to put you in the C-level table, speaking equally to the board. Adapt communication to each audience is also essential to be able to communicate these complex ideas. I'm going to close the window here. There's some construction going on. So these are the behavior levels, things that we can observe and that we can actually act upon them. So the first step to developing a C-level communication is to assess your own mindset. I always start things by a self-assessment. And I think when we're talking about behavior change, sustainable behavior change, you have to know where you are. So I'd like to introduce to you these two differences from a reactive mindset regarding communication to a strategic mindset regarding communication. When you have this reactive mindset, you usually just concerned to inform. Communication is just a way of passing on information. And when communication fails to create connections and motivate people, it actually breaks confidence, and it's much harder for you to move people, to take them to action. So usually a reactive mindset, a reactive person who's operating in this reactive mode, it's just worried to inform and check that task. And usually very anxious to speak their mind. Usually they're not listening to what the other person is saying. They're actually waiting for their turn to speak. This is a reflection for you as well. Check the last time you had a communication. Can you remember exactly what the person was saying, or you were too anxious just to speak your mind? Usually, since you are reactive, you're too worried about the reasons. You're too worried about the why you have to communicate that. And usually, you're going for some kind of excuse, some kind of way of saying that it was not your fault, or to try to find someone to blame. And it's seen as a waste of time. So if you're not strategic in your communication can be a waste of time. See, because if you think of yourself as the problem solver, and most tech professionals do, even when they achieve a leadership position, if they think of themselves as problem solver, communicating means that it's taking time to solving the problem. So it's a waste of time. But when you move to strategic mindset, you understand communication as a tool to connect and drive to action. You understand how faster you can make people behave the way you would like them to if you have this connection. And you listen to understand, you have this empathy. And this is also strategic because if you get right away people's stakeholders' needs, you can save a lot of time in rework and also in miscommunication. And it's goal-oriented. Strategic mindset, as I told before, it's always asking what for? What am I doing this for? Is it connected to my mission? So it also sees my communication as an investment in productivity. So if I have a good communication, I will have 17% more productivity because my employees will be engaged. So investment in productivity because communication leads to solutions. But there are the bad habits. So the bad habits, it's what gets in the way of actually performing strategically, communicating strategically. Breaking habits is very hard. Communication is ingrained in our daily routine, and it's really hard to pay attention to all of them. At the end of the webinar, I will give you some a tool, some ways to create new habits. But for now, I would like you to assess yourselves and understand if any of these behaviors on this list is actually preventing you from having a more strategic communication. There are a lot of bad habits, okay? So, but I focused here on the ones that are most common in tech professionals, okay? Especially tech leaders. And I'm going to focus just on these 4 ones. So speaking tech, it's why is this especially harmful? And I highlighted here for you, because it creates a huge gap between you and other C-level executives. So it's harder to connect, it's harder to belong. Not showing enthusiasms for new ideas can create a very unsafe environment and will prevent people from taking ideas to you unless they're finished and perfect. So you can miss out on a lot of opportunities because of this. So interrupting people, it's usually very, very, very often in tech leaders, because tech leaders, they're very analytical. They tell me like this, Carol, I know what the person is going to say, but it's taking too long for them to say. So I cut them so I can solve their problem faster. So that's the mindset of just informing or just solving the problem, because maybe that person, they didn't even want you to solve. They probably want just to be heard or to I don't know, get your support for something. But if you never listen to them at the end, you will never know. And there's also how you're making them feel. Maybe you're making them feel stupid, and that's gonna be definitely not productive. And being too blunt and objective, it's also a consequence of seeing communication as a way to inform exclusively. So when you think that communication was a waste of time, you can be blunt. Check the last messages that you've written. Check the tone. Check how blunt they were, or if you were really worried about the tone that you were writing down. Though I'm not going to go through all of this, I think that these are the most important ones, but you should definitely assess if you have any of these bad habits and how they are harming, getting in the way of your leadership. So what I like to propose here is to look forward and see every communication as an opportunity to interact, to know more about your stakeholders, and to get every time more strategic, to get better decision making, and how to drive people to action. So let's look forward now and bring back the communication you decided to focus on at the beginning of this presentation. I can't stress enough how important it is to work on real situations. So just don't imagine that you're going to have a presentation. If you're not going to make a presentation in the near future, pick a one-to-one situation or any kind of communication you desire, because the emotional factor really changes it all. But when you do take communication as an opportunity, you have a lot of benefits. So see, you save a lot of time. This is actually true. At the beginning, you will be like, oh, but Carol, I will be working more time in developing a better communication. But once you start practicing that, that becomes a habit, and it will be easy for you. So you're gonna have to invest some time to save time. And once your messages are really clear, you will save really a lot of time in rework, for instance. Drive people to action. When you have a message that clearly states what you want people to do, they actually know what you want them to do. If you read again your messages, your emails, check at the end, is it clear for the person who is reading that what is it that you want them to do or not? Are you as clear in your written communication as you are in your verbal communication? So also it has huge benefits for your strategic positioning. You gain a lot of respect and decision-making because you learn how to communicate, showing people how you took in considerations all these stakeholders. And it will help you retain more clients and talents because empathetic communication creates these hard to break connections that people will just, I'm not going to check my LinkedIn page today because I'm so happy here. My boss is so nice. So it's going to avoid people looking for other opportunities. So before I go to the strategies, I'm going to just to check here the chat to see if you have anything for me. Okay, so PentaBAR posted here in the link for the CTO Fundamental series. I really advise you to watch. I've watched it like 3 times already, and I love it. Let me check if I have any Q&As here. If I'm going to share the presentation, PentaBAR, can you answer about sharing the presentation? And the recording, I think they are going to share the presentation and the recording for sure. The presentation you can also reach out to me as well in LinkedIn. At the end I'll give you my content and my contacts, and I can share with you the slides, no problem at all. So moving to the strategic part, to the strategies. So there are 3 main strategies that I would like to approach with you. I don't know if I'm going to have time to go to the other helpful tips, but if we do, I will take a look at with you. But if we don't, I'll send with you with the presentations. I don't think that that's a problem, because the most important part here, and the 2 I wanted you to know, is the aims. It's the AIM framework. So what's the AIM framework? AIM stands for audience, intention, and message. Very clever, isn't it? I love this. It's very simple. And I really run these triads in my mind before I have a meeting, if it's a sudden meeting, for instance. So once you really get the hang of this, it becomes really easy for you to use, and it actually becomes a habit. So the first thing to consider, and order here is important, is the audience. Who are you speaking to? Is it a person, a group of people? What do they expect from you? What is your role with them? We don't have the same role with all our stakeholders. So knowing what people expect from you, and you can have a stakeholder map, expectation mapping written down, it can actually help you a lot with this. Then you go to intention. Once you know who is your audience, and as a matter of fact, I would like to mention this. Audience-centric communication is where all leaders should begin their work to inform, influence, or inspire others. So if you want to be strategic, you cannot just communicate to communicate. You really need to be audience-centric. And when you are, you can move to intention. And here, intention cannot be a broad thing. For instance, if you're making a commercial presentation, of course, your goal is to sell. But what do you want to make the sell at that moment? Do you want the person to give you an answer, to show this to someone else? What is the action that you want them to take after your presentation? So how do you want them to make them feel? It's not just about driving people to action, but actually getting them there in the positioning that you want. So if you want to have a position like a trusted advisor, for your client, you have to make them feel comfortable. You have to make them feel that you're advising, not pushing them. So that makes a lot of difference when you're going to write your message. And when I'm talking about message, it's not just about what you're going to write, but also the best structure and channel. And maybe you can use even more than one channel, because, for instance, sometimes you have a communication that's a one-time communication, but sometimes you have a communication that has to reverberate through time. Like, for instance, implementing company's values. If you are a leader in a strategic position, this is a responsibility you have to be the spokesperson of the mission, vision, and value of the company. So doing that one time probably won't do. You would have to have this message repeated over time. So thinking about all this can make a very big difference in your communication. So aim, what do you know about the people you decided to communicate, like the exercise that you decided to do in this session? So what do you know about this audience? To help a little bit, I'm not going to go through all of this chart here. It's just a little summary I created using the DISC framework of personality, just to show you that people have very different motivations, fears, decision-making processes, and possible objections to your communication. So usually tech leaders, they are here. They are very stable, very compliant. So, and we tend to use our own style to communicate. So, but imagine this, you are a person who has to pass on an information, and suppose it's a solution to your company. And then you just use facts, data, hard facts. But then the person you're presenting to has an high influence level in their personality, and you're just not going to connect them. They want to know how your solution will bring more recognition to the company, for instance. How fast is this going to happen? So what are the consequences to people? So if you don't connect with that, you might lose your audience in the first minute of your speech, and that's exactly what I don't want you to do. So this is also a knowledge for you to have. I know tech leaders prefer to work through knowledge, and this is not just this, there are many other frameworks that you can adopt, but it's interesting to get a little deeper understanding about people's behavior, people's personalities. So I'm going to give you now two practical examples that come from my clients. So first of all, is a business presentation. So this client, this client needed to present a solution to the board to improve an internal procedure that was taking a huge toll on his team. So since the client knows the board is very connected to results, he could bring statistics like to show this improvement has helped other companies. So like showing that you would be on the edge of something, like you would be innovative, could have a huge, it could be motivational for the audience, for the board. And also a one-to-one negative feedback. So this other clients needed to give a bad feedback for a team member who was underperformance. So, and since he knew this was also, it was a developer that and developers are usually afraid of being corrected, this is a very important information that you need to have to design your message, which we're going to see a little forward. So when we go to intention here, I think is where most people forget to pay attention to. The intention is in your communication is to be strategic. So have an intention, don't be reactive, build something with your communication. This is a challenge I present to you. So that communication is decided at the beginning of the presentation to work on it as an exercise. Write in one sentence what you want people to do and feel as a result of your communication. And while you do that, I'm going to give to move on these examples. So like in the business presentation example, remember, he was going to make a presentation to improve an internal procedure. So in this presentation, this business presentation, his intention was to get the board's approval and make them feel he's taking a 360-degree view to the impacts on stakeholders. So he wants, it's clear here that he wants the approval, the action the audience would have to make, approve or not approve. And also he wanted to stress his positioning. He wanted to position himself as a strategic leader. On the case of the one-on-one negative feedback, his intention was to make commitments to improvements and see him as an available leader. So he wanted, so he knows the guy, the developer is afraid of being corrected, and he knows his intention is to show his available leader and to commit to improvements. He wants him to improve. So what is the best way to do that? Probably not actually giving criticism. And we move to the message. So what is the best way and format for each of these communications? So in the cases of the business presentation, in the first case, my client went to the virtual meeting because he knew that the board members were really busy, and that would make it like possible. It would save everyone time, and you could send a report by email. So she chose two kinds of communication. One is the presentation, the in-person, the virtual meeting, but a live presentation, and sending reports that they can think through by email. In this case, since it was the IT industry, the board had more this result-oriented, but a lot of them, and especially the CEO, had come from the tech industry. But so it was people that wanted to take time to decide. So sending the report by email would give them time to decide, and at the same time, they would know that he was waiting for their approval. On the case of the one-on-one negative feedback, he decided to go to an in-person situation to build trust and to make like virtual check-ins to show support. I didn't put here, but he also decided to go with a feed-forward model instead of a feedback model. Instead of criticizing, he opted to use a way of what can we improve and listen to the developer for his suggestions of improvements. And he just had to align one thing or two. He didn't actually had to go through all that awkwardness of making bad criticism. Oh, and I brought you a bonus. I know not all of you make presentations, and I don't know if you decided to work on a presentation today, but this is a very good model for presentation in openings. And I used it at the beginning. If you go back the video, then you can see it. Why did I put a star on benefits? Because usually this is the thing that you forget. And even if you're going to make a one-on-one communication, if you focus on these 4 benefits, if you can narrow the benefits down to these 4 things, then you will probably reach your audience's attention and keep their attention. So it usually narrows down to time, cost, quality, and emotional benefits like stress reduction. Usually this is a very forgotten aspect of benefits, and you should never forget this, because the way tech leaders burn out, it's a huge problem. And we are also going to have one of the webinars of the series is about burnout. So that is really a huge thing. So if you go to solution, the thing is, what do you propose? Like here, for instance, I was proposing teaching you a tool. So what do you propose in one sentence? Can you write that in one sentence? Your value proposition. What is your value proposition? Why you? Why should they listen to you? Why make you able to deliver the solution? So here in my example, I explained to you I had over 15 years of experience developing communication and a lot of time in tech industry. So that made my value proposition for this presentation. The problem must be the link to the benefit, not the focus. And you have to go very, very, very fast by it, just to show them the urgency of fixing the problem. And the call to action, CTA stands for call to action, is a marketing strategy, but it's very good to use in communication. Don't have to be so markety, but it's actually having in one clear sentence what you want people to do. Have that clear to everyone will save a lot of time. So if you can write all these elements, 5 elements, in one paragraph, a 1 to 2 minutes paragraph, you will get your audience attention. Let me check here a minute if you have some more questions. Okay, why is it so hard to make ourselves clear in an online communication? Okay, I'll leave this to the end because I'm going to address this online thing at the end, okay? But this is a good question. Okay, so now we're going to talk about a little bit about behavior change. I'm a psychologist. This is the most important thing in the world for me because you now have a tool. But the thing is, why don't we use the tools that we already have? And leadership is all about behavior. So if you can crack and hack your behavior, then you will grow exponentially as a leader. Before I want to give you the tip to develop, the key to develop behavior, I would like to explain you why the development plans usually fail. You know, when you get a development plan that you have those skills that you assess, that you didn't, that you assess yourself as like, you're not very satisfied with those skills. Usually it turns out into a development plan. And they usually fail. So leaders fail to develop using this tool. And why is that? Because breaking habits is very hard. So these plans, they have too many skills to change at the same time. They focus on skills and not behaviors. So behaviors are observable. Skills are groups of behaviors. They use hard skills framework to develop people skills and emotional intelligence, and that just doesn't work. If you have a class and you understand all you have to know about the concept of emotional intelligence won't make you a more emotional intelligent person. It just doesn't happen like this. And usually these plans, they don't offer proper tools to develop good habits. So how should we do it then? This is how I do it with my clients. So usually it's taking these 4 steps. Usually you assess your bad communication habit. So you can go back to that list. I can send you that list and you assess this bad communication habit. You can ask for other people to assess it as well, people you trust, and that can work as an ally, as allies in your transformation, in your leadership path, in your leadership growth. And you pick one behavior to change, just one. But Carol, just one? Yes, just one. It's just one at a time. It doesn't work if you focus on too many things. And why doesn't it work? Like, I'm going to give you an example, like the bad habit of speaking tech. The person is speaking tech all the time, is ingrained. You've been doing it like this ever since you started the university, ever since you started to coding. And then suddenly people, that's not enough anymore. And you have to communicate in a different way. So you have to pay attention to that while you are giving the information, while you are teaching someone, while you're explaining something. So you have to do 2 things at the same time. So when we're talking about behavior change, we have to work on one thing at the same time, one thing at a time. So, but when you have, since you assess that bad communication habit, turn into a good behavior. The bad habit example, the bad habit of speaking tech, you can turn into good habit of adapting communication to the audience. And then you track it in a behavior tool. There are behavior tracker tools. They're online. You can use it on your mobile, and you just check if you have done your best. So what I suggest is a Marshall Goldsmith technique that I love, the daily questions. At the end of your day, you just ask yourself, have I done my best to communicate according to the audience, adapt my communication to the audience? And that's once you start asking yourself that every day, it starts becoming a habit, and you start paying attention to that even before you talk to people. At first, it's going to feel like this. Oh God, I spoke a lot of tech again. But you're going to immediately notice that. And then maybe you can even solve the situation by clarifying in an email. So you're just going to mend the situations. But after time, it's going to start, you're going to start remembering that before your communication. So I think we have time for the tips and tricks. Okay. So these are other helpful tips that I think you're going to like. So to become a C-level communicator, of course, there are many helpful tips for communication as a whole, but what I wanted here was to focus on C-level strategic communication. So for virtual meetings, what people expect from strategic leaders is not the same as they expect from their tech leaders in the sense of operational tech leaders. So you usually need to turn the camera on. People need to see you. Not turning the camera on breaks connection. You're already having a very difficult connection. It's harder to make connection virtually. So if you don't look at the camera, it becomes harder. Imagine if I was speaking to you like that. So I don't know, maybe communication is very important, don't you think? It loses, you lose people. Look at the camera, turn the camera on, look at the camera, nod and smile to show you're listening. It can seem a little bit forced at the beginning, but you get the hang of it once you start doing it. For team meetings, make powerful questions. You can find a list of powerful questions. They're open questions that invites people actually to speak their minds, to share. Be the last one to speak. I'm telling you this especially because of my clients, tech leaders clients, because usually they are the first to speak their ideas. They're so eager, they have so many ideas, and they're so excited about those solutions and those ideas that usually they are the first one to speak. And that cuts the ideas of everyone else, because they usually people that with high compliance levels in their personality, they avoid conflict and want to belong. So they may not get in conflict with you, even if they had a better idea. Always question benefits and impact. So if you are in a team meeting, someone brought you an idea, don't give them a cold shower. And if you think that is something they should still work on, you should ask questions about, so what is the benefit that this will bring to the company? Who is going to be benefit by that? What are the impacts for all stakeholders? And you'll be teaching them to be strategic as well. For asynchronous communication, use video recordings, especially to inspire people, to talk about values. You don't even have to use different communication. I want to make a communication just to inspire people. If you use the MVV keywords, the mission, vision, and value keywords in your communication, in your regular communication, about reports, for instance, you will be inspiring them at the same time that you're going to be passing on the information that you need. You don't have to be a motivational speaker to inspire people. You can find your own way. And if you use asynchronous communication, it can be an easier way to learn that than expecting to change in verbal communication, because you have time to think. You can use like Grammarly to check your tone. And there are many things that you can do before you deliver that communication. And I think it's going to be easier for people for tech leaders that usually like to plan things ahead and don't like to be that spontaneous. Okay, so let's check the questions. Okay, so the first question here: why is it so hard to make ourselves clear in an online communication versus face-to-face communication? Well, I know harder to make yourselves clear. I've heard actually different things about this. I like people turning to be a little more objective because they cannot speak at the same time. So this is very cultural as well. But maybe the problem here is that you need better connection. And in your virtual communication, it's that's missing, and that can become harder for you because it's too blunt, too objective, and then you cannot use other cues like body language cues. They are all restricted to your face. So I don't know if that's your case. So if I am far from your answer, please send me a follow-up question here. Dimitri asked me how to identify own bad communication habits without one giving you that feedback. That seems to be a pro-level self-awareness exercise. Well, usually you can make your own self-assessment and you will change the way you assess it. If you just take that list and read it and make an honest self-assessment of yourself, maybe and take like a few people that you trust and ask them to assess you on those habits. And then you can choose the one that you think that's more harmful to you now. Or if it's too difficult, the one that you can work on now. Because maybe the most difficult shouldn't be the one that you started, but maybe something that you can work now, and it's going to make a difference in your communication. Of course, you can have a professional to assess that with you and to brainstorm that with you. It's good to talk about that, and you can use your colleagues to work on that, or I can help you with that if you need, of course. Christina Anton, is there an online tool to check your DISC personality? Many. There are many, and they're free actually, but they are only going to give you the biggest 4 factors. They're not going to narrow it down, because actually DISC has a very good personality assessment. I have an ebook about DISC communication styles that you can download on my website or my LinkedIn page. And it's very good. It's very detailed about, it's a guide. It's a practical guide for communication, for communicating with each type of personality. And I even put like what happens when D communicates with the C, and what do they expect from each other. So I think you're going to like that. But to get this full personality, this detailed this personality report, you would have to pay for this report. And I think depending on your career moment and your goals, it's worth it. But there are other tools that are free and very good as well. You can use 16 Personalities, the free one that I really like. And I use it sometimes. I prefer DISC for leadership because it goes directly to the leadership issues. But I use others as well, and I'm not stuck with any of them. So how would you recommend to disagree with the pressure added to engineering when multiple teams have been in tough projects? Let me think about this. How would you recommend to disagree with the pressure added to engineering when multiple teams have been in tough projects? Well, it depends. Okay, the first thing is like, take this, make this stakeholder expectation mapping. The first thing you have to do is to map everything around you, what people expect from you. And then you can start telling them the priorities. Because when you have a lot of pressure in one team, you, of course, you will lose talents. So addressing the problems and the benefits of the solution you're going to propose should be your goal. So instead of complaining about the pressure, usually you are right, okay? Usually there's been too much pressure, overload. A lot of teams, like other teams, like asking a lot of the engineering. But if this is the case, then you should map why, first of all, why this is happening, and then check what do they expect from you, and how can you propose to deliver that in a different way. So it's always proposing something, not complaining. I think I cannot help you specifically with this, but because I don't know your specific situation, but usually try to think within the engineering team. Put your team together and try to think of what are the benefits, or either having more people on the engineering team, or creating a better sprint process, streamlining process of projects, another type of project management framework. So, but decide, give the solution, present your solution, but show them that you took into consideration all their needs, all their expectations. Did I answer your question? So is there any more questions? So if there isn't any more questions, let me see here. Okay, so I'm just confirming here about PentaLog will share with you the presentation and the slides, so don't worry about that. Okay, you will have the bad habits list, you will have the board that I created, everything is going to be here to arrive in your email. So since we're approaching the end, this is my call to action to you. I would love if you could answer the survey. Just 4 very fast and simple questions that will make this presentation even better for the next episodes, because we still have 2 more episodes, like time management and burnout. So if you're interested, subscribe right away. But now I would just love if you could answer the survey. It's going to take not even a minute for you to do. So did you guys get the QR code? Let me check the chat here. Okay, so answer this survey. Let me know what you thought about the presentation. And if you need anything, get in touch with me. These are my contacts. If you want to take the scientific approach and hack your behavior, you can count on me. This is my LinkedIn, my email, my website, and I'm here to help you. I hope you like this webinar and you can take part on the 2 next webinars. So thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you on the next one. Let me see if I have. Bye-bye. Thank you.